Hello Booktubians. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler review for Book 1 of Cradle, Volume 1 of Cradle, called Unsouled by Will Wight. This will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't read this book, I'd recommend not watching this video. So, this book is a progression fantasy, and it features a character named Lyndon, and I like Lyndon very much. I like any main character in any fantasy story that has a lot of drive. Not ambition per se, but specifically a goal in mind that they're willing to do just about anything for. I think that more than anything else in the world, anything else in the book, or the world building or the plot, it makes the story go forward, and this story moves. It's a very short book actually, compared to a lot of the other stuff that I read. Don't let the thickness fool you. The page quality is very, the pages are thicker and the words are spaced out, and in general, it's a very sturdy book. But it's actually a very short book, and I think one of the positives I would say for this book is it gets right into the nitty-gritty details of the magic system, which I'll get to, and the plot kind of just moves, and you kind of see what the book is going to be like in the first 50 or so pages, which is actually a decent chunk of the book, but it goes by really fast. And Lyndon as a character, with him having a goal that he does of being powerful, essentially, if I had to sum it up and just dumb it down to its bare bones, he just wants to be powerful. And that right there is what makes this book, for me, shine. Before this book, I never really read a quote-unquote progression fantasy. To me, that genre or subgenre of fantasy was more of a tagline thrown onto books. Technically speaking, I considered Wheel of Time a progression fantasy. You could even argue Stormlight is a progression fantasy. But I think I had a discussion with one of my friends online, and we talked about what a progression fantasy was, and he described it as you kind of know it when you see it, but you know when it's not it, and I'm intrigued because this is very clearly a progression fantasy. It's because the character Lyndon wants to rank up the tiers of a very defined hard magic system tier list, essentially, of foundation level copper, iron, sorry, I forgot what it was, jade, gold, and so on, and he wants to climb those ranks, and they're very defined, and his goals are very clear, and that is I guess that's the purest form of progression fantasy at its core. And I didn't expect myself to like it, because before, when I thought of progression fantasy, I often thought of something like lit RPG, where everything is very gamified. But the magic system in this world I was very pleased with. In fact, it's something that I think about outside of the book, when I'm just sitting around or something, or waiting for something to happen, or I'm just driving or whatever. I'm if I'm not reading the book, I'm actually thinking about the book. And to me, and this is a common thing that I think about for any of my favorite series. So this is a big contender for being maybe in my top whatever. I very much enjoyed it, and I think because I went in expecting to kind of just read something that I wanted to try but didn't expect to like, and then realizing, oh wow, this system has a lot to offer, and if this is what a progression fantasy is, then I'm in for it, And what this book does really well, aside from Lyndon being a very decisive, I want this, and I'm going to do the work that I need to do this, which drives the plot forward. The actual world itself, I'm going to describe it to World of Warcraft Classic. So this is a very random segue, but I feel like I need to, because it's the same feeling I got. So in World of Warcraft Classic, that I played for the first time in 2019 when it was re-released, and it gives you this sense of you are such a small cog in a large epic story, and if you want to get to the chosen one status, you have to grind through the levels and do dungeons and raids and get the best gear. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because when I booted up my first character, I booted up in Elven Forest, for those of you that are World of Warcraft fans. Beautiful place. It's your traditional, Shire location. I mean, there's literally a place called Goldshire. You cannot fathom the scope of the world in this place. It's very closed off. It's a good tutorial area. It's it's inside of a valley. The dangers are very contained, and that's what the Sacred Valley, the beginning location of this, feels like. It feels like a tutorial zone, and I'm assuming this was somewhat intentional. I don't know if it's intentional because I don't know I don't know anything about this author. I don't know, a lot of the time with the other big series, I go in knowing a little bit about the authors and his intention. Like I knew Eye of the World was going to be very Tolkien-esque, right? I knew, for example, I don't know if you can see that, but Powder Mage, I knew it was going to be very Napoleonic and like flip-flop fantasy. That's the genre. I knew going in that this is going to be an alt history thing. And so there were some expectations set. I kind of went into this blind, except for knowing that it's a progression fantasy, and that's about it. So when I went in, I didn't have these expectations, and so these comparisons, they might be intentional by the author because he might be like a gamer and he's trying to just like bring that force of game logic into this world, which I could see that. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's very, very fun. I think Sacred Valley being a tutorial area, and then when Cyril yanks Lyndon out, which I'll get to that scene, yanks Lyndon out and shows him the world of how massive it is very similar to, honestly, taking your first flight. This is a little bit more extreme, obviously, than World of Warcraft, but taking your first, bird around and getting into Stormwind and seeing the massive city for the first time. Or it's like opening up the map and realizing how big the continent is, and then realizing there's another one across the sea that you can take a boat ride with everyone to. It's like, and this in the book, what it does is it takes you out, and when she shows Lyndon how small and insignificant he is, and compared to his own society, which to him is the greatest thing. Jade is the highest you could achieve in that society, with gold being like once in a million thing. And then she tells him gold is like kind of the lowest. Like you're not really even an adult until you're gold. Like that blew my mind, because he spends the first, I want to say like maybe first quarter of the book, pretty much ironing down the fact that he's nothing in this world, and then you're told that this world is nothing in the grander world, and then you're told that the book is called Cradle because that world is a cradle. And I just I love getting baffled in scope. The scope kind of made me go, oh my god. It's like getting out of the tutorial for a game, like an Elder Scrolls game, and then just being told, all right, good luck. Like when you first open up Morrowind's map and it's all blacked out, except for the tutorial town you start in. It's like, wow, this world is massive, and if I walk out there, I will die. and that's kind of what I felt from this. It's like reading a video game. And maybe that's the intention. I know that's the intention for lit RPGs, and oftentimes I see the two terms being tossed around, like progression, lit RPG. I don't know. I'm very new to the subgenre of fantasy, so I'm giving you the raw thoughts of how I felt, and it felt like reading a video game. I don't know if this is yeah, that's kind of the intention. Maybe it is. We'll see, but I'm excited for it because the ending of this book, of course, is them leaving, Yeren and Lyndon leaving the Sacred Valley, and it feels like you have passed the tutorial zone. You're going off into, what's it called, Westfall for World of Warcraft fans. That's what it felt like when they left. And I'm excited, very much excited to see where that journey goes. So that's sort of a very general overview. Now I'm going to go into more specifics with what I really liked. I honestly didn't dislike anything, so there's really not much for me to nitpick even. But it's just going to be a lot of good stuff, honestly, because this book is, and as I said, it's a shorter book, but it's fast, so a lot happens. But a lot of the stuff that happens I enjoyed. And one of which is Yeren is just so unapologetically badass, and I think that was fun to read. I mean, it felt like a power fantasy when she's taking out the entire Heaven's Glory school on her own, and it didn't feel like it was a Gotrek and Felix situation where Felix is the guy that's probably gonna die, and Gotrek is the guy that you gotta hide behind because he's not gonna die. And that's what it felt like in that scene. And I love when they unite for the first time, and she's got him at sword point, and he's trying to spend this entire time trying to convince her that he's not setting a trap up. I just thought all their interactions were really funny, really entertaining, and I love how they eventually grow to trust each other and become a team. And I have to say, there was something cathartic about Yaren just being like, I'm going to kill every single person here, or as many as I can before I leave this place. And Lyndon's like, all right, I guess I have to agree, because they don't like me anymore, and if you don't like me, then I'm pretty much dead. I love the sort of sci-fi-esque, like, over-the-top world building with the gods, essentially, like, or whatever. Maybe they're not gods. I don't know what else to call them. The Abadan court, right? Suriel, and how she basically watches the rise and fall of rising and fall of planets. It's very, very out there. But the thing is, I think what makes it feel interesting for me is, like, I thought when I first saw this, I'm like, oh, this is going to be one of those slog chapters where it's just a lot of background. And then she zooms in and saves specifically Lyndon, and then rewinds time, and then shows him this world. So I'm like, okay, so they're more involved than I realized. But technically not involved that much at all, because that was a special thing that she did. And I think she did it only because Lyndon had the straight up guts to charge a god head on. And I think that's, again, so it's a good way to sell the reader on the character, and I think he did a really good job when literal divine intervention has to sit back and go, okay, he's gonna die, but I'm impressed. And I think it's a good setup. I thought at first, as it was happening, and then I finished, I'm like, I'm surprising I don't dislike this, because it's something that I would normally dislike, where I just kind of don't like that fate just comes down. But I feel like the justification here was, it was entertaining. It was very interesting. It showed the whole world. It made sense from a character perspective, and as I said, it sold me on Lyndon. If I wasn't, I was already sold up to that point. I thought he was an interesting character, but that was like this kid who is basically, it's like a 5-year-old charging a trained veteran with a machine gun, and going, well, here I go, and charging him. And it was I like those heroic qualities in characters, especially something like a progression fantasy. It makes sense. When she does that, and the scope of the world is extremified like it is, I think what it also did was it gave Lyndon a very, very specific goal, which I mentioned before, right? I said it's just to get powerful, but now it's like, it's not just to get powerful for the sake of getting powerful. He has seen 2 different life paths. One where he achieves more power than he ever thought possible, even in that moment. And then another life path where it's even more than that. And the reason he doesn't settle for the first one is because he realizes that if he does, his home is going to be destroyed. Like, that is going to happen, like high probability chance. So here we have that kind of probability and fate and free will. It's not explored heavily in this book, but it's like, I can see that it's going to be probably in the future, because even at the end there's like a probability meter of probability of Lyndon surviving blah 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 13%. Like there's a bit in the end where it goes over that. The reason I love that is because it allows for chaos, right? Like the chaos of human choice, and that's something that's always very fun to it's very fun to read, and especially in this book, when we're literally told, like, hey, Lyndon, you could live, grow old, have a happy family, settle down, and reach, like, iron, which is, for him, like, that he never thought he could ever get there. But caveat is, at the ripe age of, like, 50, 60, I don't even remember how old he is when the world ends, but this guy that you saw is going to come in and just absolutely raise everything. That's a lot of weight to put on somebody. And the greatest thing about this, I think, is that even with the divine intervention, even with Suriel showing him the future and basically ex machina retconning his death effectively, even with all of that, it's so terrifying because as a reader, I know that he's the main character, so he's effectively the chosen one, but he's not the chosen one. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the story's about him, so obviously he's, like, for me, he's the protagonist, so I know he's not just going to die in book 2. But the way the story is presented is, he's not Rand, who's the Dragon Reborn. He's not, like, the guy. He's just a guy that is woefully behind everyone else, who has decided to undertake this journey because of a very specific knowledge that no one else will believe he knows, but he does know. He's seen it. I don't know, that is a very, very fun premise for a story, and I guess that's kind of what made me want to think about this more, which has made me want to pick up the next book, Soulsmith. Like, I have it on the bed there. Like, I'm very excited to get in and see what he does with this knowledge, and also just explore the world, because I guess I was surprised with the world building being so engaging, even though we haven't even left Sacred Valley. I think the book was almost made for me in terms of what I enjoy in a series, or rather why I enjoy certain series more. Sometimes it's not just the series itself, but sometimes it's like the situation that I need to be excited for it. Like, the reason I got into Wheel of Time was because I saw a book cover for like one of the original book covers. So none of these, I didn't see these then, but one of the original old covers for Crown of Swords, where he's on a horse and pointing at the sword, right? And I just thought to myself, after only having read like a couple chapters, I thought to myself, well, he's like, that's definitely Rand. How does he get there? Like, what's that bridge? This book felt like it was taking that of like why I read series, why I get excited, because I want to know how he gets there or what happens next, which is funny because it's kind of, you can tell like a lot of my excitement for books sometimes is based on spoilers that I unintentionally heard or saw. But that's what gets me excited if it's mild enough, right? It's like, how does that happen? How does he get there? This felt like it was tailored for me to get excited for. Oops, backward. And it's like, she literally shows not only Lyndon, but also like the reader, like, hey, this is a promise of what the world can be like. You got flying swords and clouds and magic spears and lightning bolts raining from the sky, like, and then you have her, who's like a literal deity, and it's like you're realizing, okay, so this power scaling is not just up to gold, and if you're telling me gold is the lowest, it's like, that's a lot of progress. How's he gonna do it? I'm very excited to see what happens with him having 2 cores. I'm excited to see kind of like the semantics of the magic system with how that's gonna go. He's one of the other things that I really enjoyed is when Yeren says, you're in a weird, like, I think she says something along the lines that he's in a weird situation where he's been taught that he is never going to go anywhere higher than like copper if he's even lucky or allowed to go. But he's been doing all the like basic things that a sacred artist does. So it's almost like he's been training with weights all his life, and now for once he has an opportunity to take those weights off. Imagine how powerful he could be. It's such a unique situation, and it's almost like his situation has built him up to be incredibly powerful in the future, which is such an amazing setup using this magic system. And again, it's progression fantasy. That's the name of the game. You gotta progress, you gotta get stronger through whatever the magic system is like. And very, very clever. I think that's a very clever setup for this book. So I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5, and I think likely what's gonna happen is after I finish the series, I'm gonna come back and be like, this was pretty good, and I'm glad I picked it up, and it's gonna be a 5 out of 5. So we will see. Maybe we'll come back to this book and re-rate it. But I hope you enjoyed my spoiler review on Unsouled, book 1 of Cradle by Will Wight. And I am excited to continue. And thank you very much for listening to my rambles. But I will see you in the next one. Happy reading.